Namaskar. A warm welcome to World News and Indian Perspective on All India Radio. This is Prashant Kumar Sinha, and with me is Manoj Singh Rana, bringing glimpses of major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment, and more. The headlines. Iran agrees to allow international inspectors to install new memory cards into surveillance cameras at its nuclear sites. FBI releases declassified 9/11 documents after US President Biden's order. Polling underway for Norwegian parliamentary elections following race dominated by a future of oil and climate crisis. Prime Minister Narendra Modi asks Indian Paralympic contingent to work in few areas outside sports to motivate people. India crosses significant milestone of administering 74 crore COVID vaccine doses. Recovery rate stands at 97.51%. Schools opened in Bangladesh after 18 months following improvement in COVID-19 situation. And in US Open tennis, top seed Novak Djokovic to face Russian second seed Daniil Medvedev in the men's singles summit clash tonight. As the nationwide free COVID-19 vaccination campaign at government facilities for those above 18 years is underway, we advise our young listeners to get vaccinated and to help others get vaccinated. We also advise our listeners not to lower their guard as COVID-19 remains a threat to our health. Please stay at home unless it is essential to go out and continue to follow these 3 simple steps. Wear a face mask, maintain 2 gaz ki duri for social distancing, and focus on hand and face hygiene. For any COVID-related information and guidance, contact National Helpline number 011-2397-8046 and 1075. Now the news in detail. Iran has agreed on Sunday to allow international inspectors to install new memory cards into surveillance cameras at its sensitive nuclear sites and to continue filming there, potentially averting a diplomatic showdown this week. This was announced by Mohammad Islami of the Atomic Energy Organization of Iran after a meeting he held with the Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Rafael Grossi, in Tehran. Tehran holds all recordings at its sites as negotiations over the US and Iran returning to the 2015 nuclear deal remain stalled in Vienna. Meanwhile, Iran is now enriching small amounts of uranium to its closest ever levels to weapons-grade purity as its stockpile continues to grow. Grossi said he is glad to say that they were able to have a very constructive result, which has to do with the continuity of the operation of the agency's equipment in Iran. He said it is indispensable for them to provide the necessary guarantee and information to the IAEA and to the world that everything is in order. Mr. Islami described the negotiations between Iran and the Vienna-based IAEA as surely technical without any room for politics. He said Grossi would return to Iran soon to talk with officials without elaborating. A joint statement released by the IAEA and Iran confirmed the understanding, saying only that the way and the timing are agreed by the 2 sides. Meanwhile, Russian ambassador to the IAEA, Mikhail Ulyanov, praised the agreement on Twitter, calling it technical but very important.
Iraqi Prime Minister Mustafa al-Kadhimi became the first foreign leader on Sunday to visit and meet Iran's new president Ibrahim Raisi since he took office in August. Raisi said in a joint news conference in Tehran that he hopes that despite the aims of the enemies of the 2 countries, they will witness expansion of good relations between Iran and Iraq. He said that Iraq had agreed to waive visas for Iranian pilgrims to Shiite holy sites in Iraq later this month on the occasion of Arbaeen. Iraq relies on Iranian gas and electricity, but imports have been irregular recently due to outstanding payments. In the United States, the Federal Bureau of Investigation late Saturday released a new declassified document related to logistical support given to 2 of the Saudi hijackers in the run-up to the September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks. The document details contacts the hijackers had with Saudi associates in the US, but does not provide proof that senior Saudi government officials were complicit in the plot. Released on the 20th anniversary of the attacks, the document is the first investigative record to be disclosed since President Joe Biden ordered a declassification review of materials that for years have remained out of public view. The 16-page document is a summary of the FBI interview done in 2015 with a man who had frequent contact with Saudi nationals in the US who supported the first hijackers to arrive in the country before the attacks. President Biden last week ordered the Justice Department and other agencies to conduct a declassification review and release what documents they can over the next 6 months. The heavily redacted document was disclosed on Saturday night, hours after Biden attended September 11 memorial events in New York, Pennsylvania, and Northern Virginia.
In Norway, voting has begun in several large cities in parliamentary elections after a race dominated by the future of oil and the climate crisis. The official election day is Monday for the 169-member parliament, but polling got underway on Sunday in the capital Oslo, the main oil city Stavanger, and Arctic town Bodo, among others. More than a third of the electorate have already cast their votes in advance. The future of oil in Western Europe's largest petroleum producer has dominated the run-up to the polls as small parties demanded Norway take more dramatic action to combat climate change. The ruling Conservatives, led by Prime Minister Erna Solberg, and the opposition Labour Party, which is leading in opinion polls, both advocate for a gradual move away from fossil fuels that continue to underpin the economy. But the larger parties rarely rule alone in Norway. Smaller parties are usually required to build a majority coalition, and they can have an outsized influence on the government's agenda. Australian Minister for Foreign Affairs Marise Payne and Minister for Defence Peter Dutton paid a courtesy call on Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Saturday, soon after the conclusion of the first ministerial-level 2+2 dialogue between India and Australia. The Prime Minister has expressed his appreciation to the Australian dignitaries for the productive discussions during the 2+2 dialogue, pointing out that this was a sign of growing strategic convergence between the two countries. A number of issues were discussed during the meeting, including possibilities of further expanding bilateral strategic and economic cooperation, the common approach of both countries towards the Indo-Pacific region, and the growing importance of the Indian community in Australia as a human bridge between both sides. Prime Minister Modi conveyed his appreciation for the role that his Australian counterpart Scott Morrison has played in rapidly advancing the comprehensive strategic partnership instituted between both countries last year. Mr. Modi renewed his invitation to Prime Minister Morrison to visit India at his earliest convenience.
In today's Hotspot section, we bring you a discussion on India-Australia 2+2 dialogue and the outcome. In conversation are Skand Ranjan Dayal, former diplomat, and the journalist Manas Pratim Bhuyan.
India and Australia have held their first inaugural. It is a significant move to bolster their bilateral cooperation. India and Australia have held their first 2+2 ministerial dialogue between their defense and foreign ministers on Saturday. In the talks, both sides focused on three major areas. The first was the current situation in Afghanistan. The second important focus area was to expand cooperation between Australia and India to ensure a free, open and inclusive Indo-Pacific. And the third element of the dialogue was to strengthen the bilateral defense and strategic cooperation between the two sides. Mr. Dayal, how do you see the overall outcome of the 2+2 ministerial dialogue between India and Australia?
India-Australia relations have come a long way in the last 2 decades. I recall that in 2005-2006, when we wanted to buy uranium from Australia, the Australian government had not allowed that. But 2009, the then Prime Minister of Australia, Kevin Rudd, visited India, and India and Australia established a strategic partnership. And last year, when there was a virtual summit between the Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison and our Prime Minister Narendra Modi, this relationship was raised to comprehensive strategic partnership. And then at that meeting, it was decided that there will be a 2+2 dialogue between the defense ministers and foreign ministers of India and Australia. Here, we also must appreciate the importance of 2 plus 2 dialogue because India has this dialogue with very few countries, including United States of America. And this really shows a level of relationship which is above the level of strategic partnership because it is more action oriented. And it is very heartening that even under the COVID restrictions, as our listeners know, Australia has very, very strict COVID restrictions. The Foreign Minister of Australia, Marise Payne, and Defence Minister of Australia, Peter Dutton, came to India and had this 2 plus 2 dialogue yesterday with our External Affairs Minister, Sri Jaishankar, and our Defence Minister, Sri Rajnath Singh. And in any strategic dialogue these days, of course, Afghanistan is at the top, not because of the importance of Afghanistan as a country, but the danger that it may again become a sanctuary, a hideout for terrorists. So as you said, the top of the agenda item was the situation in Afghanistan, and the Foreign Minister of Australia, Marise Payne, said that Afghanistan can never again become a safe haven for terrorism. And this is in tune with our statements both in Delhi and in New York. And our Foreign Minister quoted the UN Security Council Resolution 2593, which was adopted on 30th August under India's chairmanship of the UN Security Council, that Afghanistan soil should not in any manner again become supportive of terrorism. So there our interests converge, and India and Australia will work closely and will observe very carefully how the new government of Afghanistan functions. Then the second issue, which is and very, very important, is cooperation in the area of Indo-Pacific. And both countries are very emphatic that there should be free and open and prosperous and inclusive Indo-Pacific region. There are misgivings on this account. Both India and Australia have been targets of Chinese expansionist policies and aggressive diplomacy. India has seen how in eastern Ladakh the Chinese have indulged in very expansionist and aggressive actions which have been very robustly repulsed by India's armed forces. And Australia has seen a very virulent form of wolf warriorship. That is, their diplomats are becoming unnecessarily aggressive when they make statements in Australia. And when Australia questioned the origin of COVID-19 virus and suggested that it might have come from China, then there was very strong retaliatory action on trade issues by China. So this wolf warrior diplomacy Australia has been a victim of. It was not specifically mentioned yesterday in the press conference, but certainly in the dialogue it would have been very, very important. And the third point, which Manas, you mentioned, that bilateral defense and strategic cooperation would be strengthened. In fact, that is the way to go. And this 2 plus 2 dialogue is action oriented. And we have seen Australia participated in the Malabar exercises. Australian Navy also participated along with the navies of India, United States and Japan just a couple of months back. And Australia invited India to participate in a major exercise which Australia will hold in the year 2023, 2 years from now, which is called Exercise Talisman Sabre. And the Australian Defence Minister Peter Dutton also announced that they will increase defence and diplomatic representation in India. They already have a military wing in the High Commission of Australia in India, but that would be strengthened. And Defence Minister Peter Dutton also said that Australia-India defence relationship is at historic high. So on all the 3 points, there was a meeting of minds, and it is a very action-oriented outcome of the 2 plus 2 dialogue yesterday.
Mr. Thail, another key aspect of yesterday's 2+2 dialogue was the common commitment by both Australia and India to fight the menace of terrorism. They strongly condemn terrorism in all the forms and manifestations, wherever, whenever, and by whomsoever committed, and they condemn the use of terrorist proxies for cross-border terrorism in a very oblique reference, I guess, to Pakistan. The minister underlined the urgent need for all countries to take immediate, sustained, verifiable, irreversible action to ensure that no territory under their control is used for terrorist attacks. Particularly, Australia reiterated its condemnation of terrorist attacks in India, including 26/11 Mumbai attack, Pathankot attack, Pulwama attacks, and reiterated its support for the people and the government of India in the fight against terrorism. How do you see Australia very openly coming out for India's support and calling for a sustained global effort to contain terrorism, to deal with terrorism?
Both India and Australia have been victims of terrorism. We all recall how hundreds of Australians were killed in Bali when the Indonesian terrorists, and they were international terrorists, they attacked some nightclubs and bars in Bali. Since then, Australia has become very conscious of the menace of terrorism, which affect the entire region of East Asia, whether it is Indonesia, whether it is Philippines, whether it is India. And this is very important that specific instances of terrorism in India have been mentioned in the joint document. But I have seen in my diplomatic experience that many of our friendly countries in private talk, they condemn Pakistan, that all this terrorism is emanating from Pakistan. But the specific instances of terrorism which have affected India, like the 26 November 2008 and Pulwama, etc., they are reluctant to include them in the joint statement. So I would say two things. One, that the complicity of Pakistan, the support of Pakistan to Taliban and to this entire new structure which has come in Afghanistan is now very clear to every democratic country. The question of how to deal with it. And unless all the democratic countries, all the countries of the world which are progressive, which are forward-looking, which believe in human rights, and which are members of G20, Australia is also a member of G20, India is, unless we all come together and put pressure on Pakistan, both moral pressure, economic pressure, only then Pakistan will mend its ways and we can expect some cooperation from Pakistan. Otherwise, it will continue to deny that it is helping Afghanistan and continue to close its eyes for if there are sanctuaries of terrorism in Afghanistan or in the FPAC region, which is Afghanistan-Pakistan region, the bordering region. So this pressure is very, very significant for India and for the region and for the world.
Defense Minister Rajnath Singh, in his comments yesterday, invited Australian industry to take advantage of India's liberalized foreign direct investment policies in the defense sector. How do you see this new initiative of co-production and co-development of key military equipment by both the countries?
This is a very important policy objective of India, that in the last 7 decades, the production of defense equipment, defense platforms in India has been sluggish. And we are dependent on imports of defense equipment and fully made equipment from Russia, from US, from France, from Israel, etc. And now the government wants partners that other countries should come and manufacture in India. At least 70% of the value addition should be in India, and 25-30% can come from that partner country, because the core technology no company will be willing to transfer. So that is understandable. And in that context, Raksha Mantri Shri Rajnath Singh's invitation to Australian industry, which is a very highly advanced in science and technology, is very important, and one could see some results in the near future.
Thank you, Mr. Thail.
Thank you very much.
This is All India Radio giving you the world news. For quick news updates around the clock, follow us on Twitter at AIR News Alerts.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi has exhorted the para-athletes to identify and work in few areas outside sports to motivate people and to help bring changes to mark the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. Mr. Modi said Paralympians have become celebrities due to their hard work and people will listen to them and accept their views, which can play a big role to bring changes in the country. The Prime Minister shared the video of his interaction with the Indian Paralympic contingent of Tokyo Paralympics at his residence last week.
आप लोग देश को क्या दे सकते हैं, देश को कैसे मोटिवेट कर सकते हैं, आपके आसपास के लोगों को, स्कूल के लोगों को और बच्चों को और नौजवानों को कुछ न कुछ संकल्प कीजिए। इस आजादी के अमृत महोत्सव में मेरी खेल जगत के उपरांत मैं कोई एकांत जिम्मा दूं और मैं उसको पूरी तरह समय दूं, सप्ताह में 1 घंटा, महीने में 1 घंटा, जो भी अपनी सुविधा। लोग आपकी बात को, आपके व्यवहार को बहुत स्वीकार करें और देश में बदलाव लाने में बहुत बड़ी भूमिका अदा।
On the occasion, the Paralympians shared their experiences and challenges and lauded the Prime Minister for his continuous support and encouragement. The Indian Paralympians created history by winning 19 medals this year at the Tokyo Paralympics.
India's cumulative COVID-19 vaccination coverage has crossed the 74 crore mark. The Union Health Ministry of India has termed it as yet another achievement in its fight against COVID-19. The Health Ministry said over 28,000 new cases of COVID-19 were reported in the last 24 hours. The ministry said over 34,000 people recovered from the infection during the same period, taking the total recoveries to more than 3 crore 24 lakh. The recovery rate currently stands at 97.51%.
Schools up to class 12th opened in Bangladesh after almost 18 months on Sunday as the COVID-19 situation in the country eased over the last few days. The Secondary School Certificate SSC, Higher Secondary School Certificate HSC and Primary Education Completion examinees attended classes following strict health guidelines. However, the majority of students will still not be attending classes on a daily basis as the government has allowed only students of class 5, 10 and 12th to attend classes on a daily basis. Other students from class 1 to class 4, from class 6 to class 9 and 11th standard will attend classes once a week till the government decides to open schools for everyone on a daily basis. Education Minister Dr. Deepu Moni told the media on Sunday that the schools will be closed again if there is a spike in COVID infection. Britain's Health Secretary on Sunday said that authorities have decided not to require vaccine passports for entry into nightclubs and other crowded events in England, reversing course amid opposition from some of the Conservative government supporters in Parliament. Health Secretary Sajid Javid said that the government has shelved the idea of vaccine passports for now but could reconsider the decision if COVID-19 cases rise exponentially once again.
Afghanistan's acting higher education minister on Sunday said that gender segregation would be enforced in Afghan universities and that protocols were being put into place for the same. Backtracking from its assurances to respect women's rights in Afghanistan, the Taliban last month had announced a ban on co-education. Addressing a press conference, acting minister Maulvi Abdul Baqi Haqqani said that the outfit was looking for a female teacher to teach women.
The All Pakistan Newspaper Society has rejected the proposed Pakistan Media Development Authority (PDMA) and termed it an attempt to tighten the Imran Khan-led government's control over media from one platform. According to Dawn, all members of the Newspapers Society unanimously rejected the proposed PMDA, which appears to be an extension of the Pakistan Electronic Media Regulatory Authority to all media with more regimental provisions to subjugate and take over the independence of free media. The Executive Committee of APNS at a meeting held on Thursday with Society's President Samad Ali in the chair was briefed on the meetings held between the stakeholders and the federal government on the establishment of the PMDA, the Dawn stated. The Indian community in Beijing on Sunday celebrated Ganeshotsav with traditional fervour and gaiety. The celebrations, led by Beijing Marathi Mitra Mandal, was part of the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, which was attended by more than 200 members of the Indian diaspora and many other foreigners at the Indian embassy premises. India's ambassador to China, Vikram Misri, and other officials of the embassy also attended the event, which was full of devotion and festivity celebrating Indian culture. Cultural program was also presented by the community members. An art exhibition celebrating different forms of Lord Ganesha was put up by children. Children also presented a dance program which was the center of attraction. A few days ago, Beijing Malayali Association led Onam celebrations, bringing together the Indian community and Friends of India at the embassy. Interestingly, foreigners of different nationalities took keen interest in understanding the Indian festivals and culture in both programs.
In the US Open tennis top seed Novak Djokovic will face Russian second seed Daniil Medvedev in the summit clash of men's singles tonight. Djokovic defeated German fourth seed and Tokyo Olympic champion Alexander Zverev in a tense and nail-biting semi-final clash 4-6, 6-2, 6-4, 4-6, 6-2 yesterday. Djokovic equaled Roger Federer's record with his 31st Grand Slam final. He's on the brink of completing the first men's singles calendar year Grand Slam since 1969. One more victory will give the 34-year-old Serbian star the first calendar year slam since Rod Laver did in 52 years ago. Medvedev cruised into the finals after producing a dominant performance to overcome 12-seed Canadian Felix Auger-Aliassime 6-4, 7-5, 6-2 in the last four at New York. In women's section, rising British sensation Emma Raducanu won singles title, defeating Leila Fernandez of Canada. 18-year-old Raducanu defeated 19-year-old Fernandez in straight sets 6-4, 6-3 in the summit clash. She has become the first British woman to win the title in 53 years. Raducanu has also become the first British woman in 44 years to win a Grand Slam singles title. Britain's Queen Elizabeth congratulated Raducanu on her success and said it is a testament to her hard work and dedication. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson said Raducanu showed extraordinary skill in the game. Meanwhile, Joe Salisbury has become the first Briton to win two doubles titles at a Grand Slam in the Open era after claiming the mixed double title a day after winning the men's doubles finals.
A quick look at the headlines once again. Iran agrees to allow international inspectors to install new memory cards into surveillance cameras at its nuclear sites. FBI releases declassified 9/11 document after US President Biden's order. Polling underway for Norwegian parliamentary elections following race dominated by the future of oil and the climate crisis. Prime Minister Narendra Modi asks Indian Paralympic contingent to work in few areas outside sports to motivate people. India crosses significant milestone of administering 74 crore COVID vaccine doses. Recovery rate stands at 97.51%. Schools opened in Bangladesh after 18 months following improvement in COVID-19 situation. And in US Open tennis, top seed Novak Djokovic to face Russian second seed Daniil Medvedev in the men's singles summit clash tonight. India is celebrating the 151st birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. Before we end, let's listen to his favorite bhajan Vaishnavajan by artists from Croatia. And with that, we end this bulletin. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of World News.